In the early 20th century, oil was discovered in northeast Oklahoma. Soon after, many oil barons flocked to Tulsa to set up their own enterprises in the newly booming metro. Wealthy magnates designed skyscrapers to stake their claim in the new oil capital of the world.
The first oil was found across the Arkansas River, a little bitty place called the Red Fork area. And then south of Tulsa, we had something called the Great Big Glen Pool that happened. But what Tulsa already had in place that those locations didn't, we had 5 railways coming through the city on 1st Street. Thank you, oil barons, for paying off the railroad companies to bring the tracks through what was being touted as the Magic City.
The skyline of Tulsa is full of architecture you can't find nearly anywhere else. Tulsa has one of the largest concentrations of Art Deco architecture, the preferred style of the time, in the United States. However, just as interesting as Tulsa's beautiful skyline is what lies beneath many of the famous buildings.
It's a great door, great steel door. So come on, this is private, it's always locked on the other end.
But before we get to that, you must know this man, Wade Phillips.
We were so fortunate to have that Phillips family as part of our community for a time. Wade Phillips was one of 10 siblings. His oldest brother was Frank. And Frank Phillips put his house up in the Bartlesville area, starting Phillips Petroleum, evolving into Phillips 66.
Wade, however, set up his business in Tulsa. Striking it rich, Wade Phillips built the Phil Tower in 1928 as his personal office building, along with a lavish mansion known as Villa Philbrook, and in 1931 another office building across the street from the Phil Tower known as the Phil Cade. In 1938, during the Great Depression, Wade Phillips and his wife Genevieve donated Philbrook to the city of Tulsa as a museum and moved into a newly added penthouse on the top of the Phil Cade building directly across the street from his office high-rise.
It was 1937 that the Phillips family moved upstairs into their penthouse suite. When the building, Phil Cade building, was built in 1931, there were no air-conditioned buildings in all of Tulsa. By the time they moved upstairs, Phil Cade building became the very first
businessmen and their families. Phillips no longer felt safe to walk the street between his home and his office and decided to build a tunnel.
Theory is that he would kiss his wife Genevieve every day over there in the penthouse of the Phil Cade building. He'd go down to the basement of the Phil Cade, and then he'd come underneath 5th Street, which is through this private tunnel. He'd get through this great steel door and go, "Whew, I've made it another day." He was safe. So come on, and this is private, it's always locked on the other end. That was just back in the day when so many wealthy people in Tulsa and throughout the world were having their money stolen or their family members kidnapped for ransom money. Supposedly, he had another tunnel from his office building, the Phil Tower building, that went underneath the street of Boston to the bank that stood across the street. And I've looked and looked for that tunnel and I couldn't find it, but about a year ago, had a group of engineers come through. These guys were huge and they filled this space. Every one of them came in, they started banging on the walls. So listen to what I heard. A little banging, all the way here. So this is hollow. And every one of those engineers went, that's it. He had a tunnel within a tunnel that went underneath the street of Boston, and that's for his own safety to go to the bank that stood across the street. So our guess is this tunnel was built late in the 30s, if not maybe early in the 1940s. He was getting most concerned about going across 5th Street every day from his penthouse suite building to his office building that he called some of the buddies in Nevada that were miners. And he said, guys, would you come to Tulsa? Dig me a tunnel under the street so I'll be safe every single day.
This was the first of many tunnels to be built in downtown Tulsa. Within the following decades, others began sprouting up, connecting many important buildings.
So this is 4th and Boston, and this is where we're going to access the public tunnel system. And just so you know, all of the old parking garages in downtown Tulsa have tunnels that serve the buildings where they park people. Underneath the street of Boston Avenue is this area where the ceiling is much shorter than in the other part of the tunnel. This is connecting the 320 South Boston building to the Hyatt Regency Hotel.
This wealth of knowledge is Kelly Gibson, owner of Tours of Tulsa, a tour guide service for everything that's Tulsa.
I've been doing tours in Tulsa now for 10 years, but I haven't always owned the company. I always worked downtown at a law firm where they'd let me clock in and clock out whenever I had a tour, as long as I got my hours in for the day. But in 2014, I was fortunate to be able to buy the tour company, and I've hired 7 guides that work for me. We're doing tours every single day of the week. We do many of this walking Art Deco historical tunnel tour, lots of field trips, lots of all different age groups love this particular tour. But we give church tours, so much history with those churches. We also take people down to the Greenwood Avenue area, Greenwood Cultural Center, and we get that race riot history that was very much a part of this city. But in our walking tours, we try to keep our size of group anywhere from 1 person, we do a lot of individuals, up to about 15 people. And the way that we charge for our tours is not per person. We just charge for the hour, whether or not we're stepping on buses or trolleys or whether we're walking. We charge $80 for the hour. 1 person to 15 people, or a charter bus of 50 people, but we charge the same $80 for that hour time.
The history of Tulsa is a fascinating one, built by some of the most innovative minds of the time. There's history everywhere. Sometimes you just got to know where to look.